push my medication. Makes me go crazy.
Is somebody helping you?
He thinks that that boat's coming to get me.
Oh, okay.
I thought I was going to see Jesus.
Okay.
Welcome back to the second episode of the Coffee with Crime podcast. I am happy to have you here. So for today, we are going to be doing a deep dive into the tragedy of the Mica Miller case. There is so much to go into. Every time I feel like I've figured it all out, I find out more details and more information. It's really one of those cases where if you keep looking, you will find something. And we're really going to take a look at the history of Pastor John Paul Miller, and there is so much to go over there as well. And that's right, this is another story of a corrupt pastor. 2 for 2 so far. Maybe I need to change the title of my podcast. And yeah, not only is the situation with Mica and her tragic passing just absolutely heart-wrenching, but it's actually maddening. So first, I'm going to do a background on the pastor John Paul Miller, and I'll refer to him as JP. And then we will go over a timeline of the events, because believe me, there are a lot of events leading up to her passing. And then at the end here, I'll share my opinions on the case. Don't forget that all opinions are my own, based on very public resources that I have gathered and researched myself. I always recommend that you form your own opinions and do your own research. And currently, I should say that at the moment, John Paul has not been found guilty of anything in relation to the passing of Mica Miller. And also, don't forget, if you're into true crime as myself, like the video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a video. So John Paul Miller is a 44-year-old pastor at Solid Rock Church in Myrtle Beach. And if you actually visit this church's website, which while I'm recording this, it still does list JP as the pastor, it states, Pastor John Paul Miller spent his teenage years playing the piano in churches as well as nightclubs, and he once believed that church is only for fake people because they act one way in church and they act a totally another way out in public, which obviously is quite ironic given the circumstances. In 2006, when John Paul was only 26 years old, he in fact started his very first church in South Carolina, the Solid Rock Ministries. He said he held the church within a local library at South Carolina. It was only 6 minutes long because he only allegedly knew one Bible scripture, and it was a very small gathering that only included very close friends, family members, and according to this text here, drug-related acquaintances. And then somehow from there, JP grew a following. It's likely because I believe that he had connections within the field. His own father was also a pastor, Reginald Wayne Miller. He was a well-known pastor within the Myrtle Beach area, and so it kind of ran in the family. However, Pastor Reginald has a checkered past, as he has been accused of turning his Bible college into a forced labor camp for foreign students. So JP's dad, Reginald, he allegedly made teens work for little to no pay for more than 50 hours a week, all while housing them in rooms without hot water, heating, or air conditioning. He also allegedly had threatened to revoke their student visas if they complained or failed to comply with his demands. In 2014, Reginald took a deal with the federal prosecutors after pleading guilty to fraud in foreign labor contracting, visa fraud, and willful failure to pay minimum wage. And so yeah, those are pretty steep charges. And this criminal history, along with being a pastor, also runs in the family, as JP has quite a history with the law as well. This includes dozens of traffic violations and a previous conviction for assault and battery. Get this, when JP was only 19 years old, he drove his pickup truck into a woman 2 times. It is said that this lady was out sandbagging the area, which is something they do when they're having heavy flooding. Not only did he drive his truck into her 2 times, but then he proceeded to accelerate his truck and dragged her approximately 100 yards after she had notioned to him to slow down. And though she did thankfully survive this attack, she of course filed a civil lawsuit against him for severe and permanent injuries. He was given a suspended 4-year prison sentence, meaning that he would not need to serve time if he abided by all the terms of his probation. So this included a small fine and 500 hours of community service. So to me, I read that and I was just entirely shocked. He drove his truck into a lady twice, not once, twice, dragged her body 100 yards, and was only given basically probation and community service. To me, blown away. I have to wonder if it's because he had connections, because that could have been deadly and the punishment doesn't seem to fit the crime. That gives you a really good idea of who we are talking about here, Pastor John Paul Miller. And that's only stuff that just happened before, obviously, the situation with him and Mica, but there is a lot more here, a lot more dirt on this man to go over. So John Paul has 5 children. The first, Logan Hardy, was allegedly born out of wedlock to a woman named Lynn or Lene, and this was when JP was still a senior in high school. From the sounds of it, the relationship between JP and Lynn was very toxic, which we're going to see is a very obvious theme with JP and his partners. So the two continued to battle over custody over their son Logan, and JP actually admits to refusing to follow their visitation agreements, even disrupting his son's time at daycare. JP's dad, Reginald, actually wrote a letter to the courts suggesting that Logan should be raised with JP in a Christian household and that he would do better with JP. And I found the letter. If you read it, I'll put it here on the screen. Very chauvinistic, and just again is very telling of the dynamic and the behaviors within this family. But it wasn't until later on, when JP actually married his first wife, Alison Williams, where they came to some kind of custody agreement with Logan. So like I said, JP was married once before Mica. Her name was Alison, and they were married for 16 years. Those two had 4 children together, and in a strange twist, Mica was actually the babysitter for JP and his previous wife, Alison. So Mica joined JP's church and youth group when she was only 14 years old, and when she turned 18 in 2012, Mica married a man named Jeremy Deese. Jeremy was not only close friends with JP, but JP actually officiated Mica and Jeremy's wedding. And it's alleged that JP realized he loved Mica when he saw her walk down the aisle to marry Jeremy. And in 2015, the two of them, that's Mica and JP, were then discovered to actually be having an affair, leading to both married couples to file for divorce in September 2016. And actually, according to an affidavit that's since come out, Alison, his first wife, has actually claimed that JP has had multiple relations with girls under the age of 16. Alison writes in the affidavit, "He had also confessed to me and other staff members of the church that he had had sexual encounters with young females from the church. When the defendant's affair was discovered, the church leaders demanded that the defendant seek counseling for sexual addiction, and when he refused, the majority of our church left the congregation." Alison states that she tried to reach out to the minor females once she was able to identify them and have them come forward and report his actions, but they allegedly declined to come forward because they were fearful of retribution from the pastor. And so Alison actually went ahead and filed a report herself and was told by the department that she would not likely be believed because they were in the middle of this difficult divorce. Just that alone is pretty infuriating. It's the officer's job to protect and serve. They should do their due diligence to make sure that he wasn't an offender taking advantage of these young females in his role of authority. I mean, after we learn everything here with JP, I definitely believe Alison. I believe that he has made some very inappropriate choices. But yet, after all of this, after the traffic violations, the assault conviction, the allegations of multiple sexual encounters with young girls, he still somehow maintained his role as a pastor, and still people came and listened to him. You would think that people were getting wind of this Yet people continued to show up and continued to follow his teachings. And yes, like I said, Mica and Jeremy and John Paul and Alison, they all divorced in the year 2016. And then on New Year's Eve in 2017, guess who got married? Mica and John Paul, because remember, he decided on her wedding day with Jeremy that he loved her and he wanted her to be his. So now let's go over the timeline of events leading up to Mica's tragic death, because like I said, there is so much to go over leading up to this point that it can be really hard to follow, and so I'm going to try and break it down as concisely as possible. So in October 2023, Mica Miller files for divorce on the grounds of adultery. And then on February 8th, 2024, Mica is petitioned and involuntarily hospitalized for mental health for 48 hours. And during this time, JP was given her belongings, including her purse, her car keys, and according to a sworn affidavit from Mica's sister, during this time when he took all of her belongings, he went into the home and took a lot of Mica's personal items, allegedly stuff that she had been collecting over the years regarding abuse and things that she was going to use in the divorce trial. He took all of it and allegedly erased it all. And then on February 13th, 2024, the divorce case was dismissed because allegedly both Mica and JP decided that they could reconcile. However, on February 22nd, John Paul files for separation himself and asks that he be given exclusive use of the family home, the car, and as well, he demanded that Mica be banned from making any kind of social media posts about him or the church. And then in March, things seemed to spiral even more. So there are actually 2 incident reports made on March 11th, 2024 from Mica regarding an unidentified man harassing and following her. So in the first report, Mica heard a pop from her tire, and so when she pulled over, she noticed a piece of metal protruding from the tire. When she called a police officer to the scene, the police officer actually documented that it was a deflation device that you could purchase online. Mica did name a suspect. The name of the suspect was redacted in the report. However, one could assume, allegedly, in my own opinion, allegedly, I'm sure it was John Paul. However, the police stated that there was not a sufficient amount of evidence to prove that the suspect actually placed the device. Later that day, while Mica was at the gas station, she believes that the same man who attempted to slash her tire or deflate her tire showed up at the gas station trying to talk to her. She told the man to leave her alone, and then when she went to go ahead and pull her phone out to record him, he took off. Same day now, she takes her car to a dealership to get her car fixed, and when she's there, they tell her that they actually found a tracking device on her car. She calls up a police officer again. He asks her to meet him outside the magistrate's office where she can show him the device. So she meets him there. She gives him the device. It's confirmed that there was a tracking device. And it's there that she says that she wants to file a restraining order. During this time when she's talking with the officer outside this office regarding the stalking and the tracking device and the restraining order that she wants to file, she sees the same suspect driving slowly by. She points him out to the officer. This is the same man. And when he notices that they had seen him, he speeds off. And it was right around this time that JP actually delivered this sermon. Listen to this.
Listen, if you ever want to know what I'm going through in life, it's always about what I'm preaching about. God is so good to do that every single time. One day I'm going to preach about getting rich, strong, healthy, and finding a hot wife that loves Jesus. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just kidding. My wife went in the hospital. I looked at her phone and I counted over the past 2 years 18 people who had texted her and said, if you ever want to talk about your husband, you can talk to me and say anything and I'll keep it confidential. Why the heck does somebody want to hear what somebody else says about their spouse? And 2 of those 18 were men. I thought, what? And I was thinking when I read that, I thought, Mark Cassidy, he's one of our elders here, and Jackie, she oversees our New Testament discipleship. Could you see Mark calling another woman and saying, you know what, I just want to tell you some things about my wife I don't like? Or could you see Jackie calling a woman or a man, either one? No, if someone wants to call you and say bad things about somebody else, that's a demon talking to you, and the only way to respond is with the Word of God. Because see, demons love words that line up with what they want. They cannot stand the Word of God. So if anyone calls you and says, listen, I need to tell you about what my husband's doing, my wife, you say, listen, here's what the Bible says you need to do with that, because that's a demon. So there you go. Okay, I feel much better already.
18 people. 18 people. Not one, not two, not three. 18 people reached out to Mica concerned for her safety and well-being in regards to her relationship with JP. That is insane. I just can't get over that number. I can't believe he talked about this within his church so nonchalantly, and I just can't believe that this many people saw what was happening and still what happened as an end result. And then on March 22nd, Mica goes on to Facebook offering advice to those that are in an abusive relationship, and it's really harrowing to watch.
So today my heart's a little heavy. I've had a lot of women that have reached out to me about situations of abuse, and I just want to tell you what a lot of people have told me lately and reminded me, because I think I forgot. I knew, but I pushed it in the back of my head just because of my situation. But you are the bride of Christ. Before anybody else's bride, male or female, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what gender you are. Abuse is abuse. And you are the bride of Christ. And my Bible says that he took all the abuse you could think of for you so that you didn't have to live that life of slavery and bondage and pain. Jesus took it all for you. So you don't have to stay in a abusive relationship, whether that's sexual, whether that's somebody forcing you to take illegal drugs, somebody forcing you to take illegal drugs, or alcohol abuse, or physical abuse, psychological abuse, making you think that this is all your fault, or you're a bad mom, or you're a bad wife, or you're a bad husband, or you're not giving it your all when you know you are. God hates divorce, but why? According to everybody I've asked and the scriptures that I've found, it's because it hurts people. But does abuse hurt people? How do you think God feels about that? So, I want to remind you, like a bunch of people have been reminding me lately, that I'm God's bride first. And even an earthly spouse, who's a good spouse, when they know that their bride is being hurt, just imagine what an earthly spouse does. What do you think your heavenly spouse does when you're the bride of Christ and he sees his bride going through abuse and hurt? What do you think he thinks about that? So, encouragement in all this is you are the bride of Christ first before anybody else's. And he's got you. And he sees you. And he loves you.
So just 1 month after that post, on April 25th, Mica serves JP with divorce papers. That's April 25th, 2024. And not only 48 hours would Mica allegedly take her own life in the state park.
Robeson County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
Hi, are you able to trace the location of my phone?
Let me see. You don't know where you're at?
In National Park.
What's the phone number you're calling me from?
843-655-5242.
Where's the park located at?
In Fair Bluff.
Let's see.
I have my location on, I think, on my phone. Find my phone is on. I just did my my location.
Okay, I'm showing, I don't think you are in Robeson County. Are you at the Lumber River State Park?
Yeah, that's where I am.
Okay. Tell me what's, happened.
I'm about to myself, and I just want my family to know where to find me.
Okay, ma'am. Just listen to what I'm saying, okay? Let me make sure I got the exact location where you're at, okay? Just 1 minute.
When investigators arrive on the scene, a gun case is in the passenger seat of Mica's car, and a box of in the center console are discovered. The investigators also found a receipt for the from a pawn shop from the same day of Miller's death. While authorities searched the Lumber River State Park, they were approached by someone who had been fishing that claimed to have found a bag that contained Mica's identification, and that they had also heard someone crying, followed by a loud bang. While the search continued for Mica, another 911 call came in that someone had found a body in the park's water. Law enforcement would then identify the body as Mica Miller. Now, it has been said that JP has an alibi for the day before her death and the day of. Allegedly, he was out of town for a sporting event with his new romantic interest, and this has been confirmed with video footage, but JP was not in the area when Mica lost her life. But it was the way that JP announced Mica's death that really kind of triggered this national attention to the case of Mica Miller. So on April 28th, just 1 day after her passing, JP delivered a sermon to his church just like he normally does. Things continued to carry on as if nothing happened. JP is seen delivering a sermon, making jokes, boasting about himself. Again, just no signs of grief. No signs of mourning. And after he delivered this nonchalant sermon is when JP asked the members of his church to stand up because he had an announcement to make.
I'm going to make an announcement, and after the announcement, I'm going to ask that you leave church quietly and don't talk about the announcement here in the building, please, if you can, so y'all can stand to your feet. Before I make the announcement, I also want to say that my request to you is that you will continue to come to church and serve and give for the next, little bit. Because I don't want to have. I'm taking a little bit of a break, and I don't want to have to worry about the church. My break may be a few days, a few weeks. I don't know. I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away. And it was self-induced, and it was up in North Carolina. And we're gonna have a funeral for her next Sunday here at 3 p.m. And so it's all I can. I'm just kind of going on adrenaline right now. So y'all pray for me and my kids and everybody. And she wasn't. Y'all knew that she wasn't well mentally, and that she needed her medicine that was hard to get to her. And so I'm sure there'll be more details to come. But just keep our family in your prayers. And I'm going to let Pastor Randall, my bishop, he can pray. I'll get him a microphone. He'll pray out. And if you have anything you want to share as well, I appreciate it.
A few days later on May 5th, Mica's friends and family hold a rally outside the Solid Rock Church seeking justice for Mica. They hold a memorial that same afternoon. And around the same time, JP hosts his own separate memorial service at the church where he again behaves extremely odd, forcing tears and saying things that are just super weird.
It still didn't hit me. I thought she was going to wake up, I even tried to raise her from the dead one time this week. And that morning, actually, I went to the mall later. She had bought me this dog tag, and the chain broke, so I went to the mall to get it fixed. And I saw a female about 20, 30 feet in front of me, and she was wearing one of Mica's dresses. and she had the same tattoo Mica has on her arm and the exact same hair. And out of just instinct, I screamed, "Mica!" And the girl turned, and it was one of her sisters. And I thought I raised her from the dead. She's alive, you know.
And then, so the following day on May 6th, the county's medical examiner makes a statement that Mica's death was indeed self-inflicted based on the nature of the wound. And then in a statement from JP's attorney, who is also a member of JP's church, he says, "Our client refutes any report that suggests he ever abused his wife. It has come to light that Mica Miller struggled with mental illness, specifically bipolar disorder, which, when not properly managed, led to paranoid episodes and self-destructive behavior. Again, Mica suffered from mental illness, and some reports made by her in the recent past are nonsensical. This unfortunate reality underscores the importance of destigmatizing mental health issues and ensuring those affected receive appropriate support and treatment." I think that there is clear evidence that JP was indeed abusive towards Mica, and the fact that he would even deny these claims is absolutely ridiculous. Mica filed so many reports, and so many outsiders saw firsthand JP's abusive tendencies. And there are also documented emails from JP himself where he admits to his controlling and abusive behaviors. For example, JP actually posted a topless photo of Mica on the internet. He said he only left it up for an hour, and he did it essentially out of spite because he was upset with her. But still, even 1 hour, the fact that he would take a photo of her in that way and share it with the public, again, really just shows you how sickening JP really is. In an email he writes, "I'm sorry for putting a picture of you on the internet. It was for less than 1 hour and immediately taken down. I was hurt that you were telling everyone horrible, intimate details of my past sin, and I just wanted to try and hurt you. Please forgive me. It was evil of me to do that." And then in another email he writes, "When someone hurts me, I try to hurt them back rather than forgive. Instead of me forgiving you, I just attack and try to cause pain." That sounds like a man of God. What happened to what would Jesus do? And if you look on his church's website, one of their 4 core principles is forgiveness. Yet JP does not hold himself to the same standards. Instead of forgiveness, he aims to hurt even more. He aims to attack. There you have it, people. Pastor John Paul. So Mica's family attorney has hinted that a potential wrongful death lawsuit could be coming against Solid Rock Church based on documents that were left by Mica suggesting that JP used his authority to isolate Mica. Also, the United States Attorney's Office and the FBI have reportedly been called to investigate the death of Mica.
At liberty to say what all they're doing. I'm just pleading that they do, more. I'm pleading that they please, check into this, do some combing, because you will find some connections. You will find some, if nothing else, the influence that drove her to that.
Why was the body cremated so quickly?
Good question. Because he wanted to. We did not want to. We wanted her to be buried. So if anything, other evidence came to light or some kind of connection was made, she could be exhumed and re-examined. Because unbeknownst to us, there was not an autopsy, and there was only a blood alcohol test done. So during the police briefing, the sheriff's briefing, when we were up near the incident site in North Carolina, they said that they have plenty of material they have enough sample material to do multiple tests for a long time. So we said, well, we need to move that forward. And we ended up filling paperwork out on the spot after that briefing to do a full toxicology report.
All right, so what do I think? I think that it's probably clear what I think, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think it is very clear that JP has a pattern of abusive behaviors, and is a dangerous man. Starting at a young age when he was convicted for assault to the alleged grooming and multiple sexual encounters with multiple young girls, the relationship with his first wife, Alison, which I didn't even get into all of the allegations from his first wife, where he has actually been accused of stalking her as well. So this is an incident report made by JP's first wife, Alison, in 2016 regarding an individual who constantly stalked and harassed her. And although the name of the offender is redacted in the report, it's really easy to assume that she's talking about John Paul, as this is right around the same time that the two of them got divorced, and just based on the behavior of the offender, it's really wild to read. And so I want to read some of it to you right now. So it says, on March 6, 2016, the victim reported that the offender constantly stalks and harasses her. The victim said the offender is her blank, and since their breakup, the offender will not leave the victim alone. The victim said the offender comes to her job, her new church, and very often comes to her home. The victim says the offender uses blank, I think it says their children, for an excuse to see her, and the victim feels sure that the offender comes to her home when she is not there. Several months ago, the reporting officer responded to the victim's residence at the request of her father, who stated that the offender was laying in the victim's front yard. The victim was not home at that time. At that time, the offender appeared to be under the influence of something, and rescue was notified to respond. The offender refused treatment and said that maybe he got his medication mixed up and took his sleeping pills instead of his other medication. Now, remember the intro to this video with John Paul rolling around on the grass talking about meds and meeting Jesus? Sounds a little familiar.
I switched my medication. Makes me go crazy. I thought I was going to see Jesus.
Okay.
And then on the next page, it says, the offender told the victim that it is God's will for him to move back into the victim's house. The victim has refused to allow the offender into her home and says that she has no desire for the offender to ever move in with her. Within the past month, the victim said that the offender has moved into a house directly across the pond. What? And in front of the victim's house. Since the offender has moved across the pond from the victim said that the offender will call, text, and tell the victim that he sees her when she leaves and comes home, and that the offender also lets the victim know when he sees the victim has company. The victim said that the offender told her the only thing blocking his view, not allowing the offender to have complete visual access to the front of the victim's residence, is a magnolia tree that is planted in the middle of the cul-de-sac. The victim said that she has noticed several times a white substance spread around the base of the tree and has realized that the substance is Epsom salt. The victim feels sure that the offender is placing the large amount of Epsom salt around the tree in an effort to kill the tree. The victim said that the reason she believes the offender is the one responsible for the salt is because he used the same technique to kill a few trees that were on the property where his church is. What the heck? This man is absolutely insane. And clearly we see it was not an isolated incident with Mica. This is who John Paul is. He is obviously a stalker and a psycho. I mean, he moved across the street and tried to kill the tree in between their houses. Tell me that's not a crazy person. And then, of course, everything we see here with Mica, with the abusive, controlling tactics, the stalking, the harassing, the exploiting, and complete mistreatment of sweet Mica. This man not only has no business being a pastor, but in my opinion, has no business walking free and belongs in prison. There are a lot of theories out there right now whether or not Mica's death was self-inflicted. Some even believe that her 911 call was actually AI. And though I'm not sure about all of that, I will say that for a man that has made so many claims, so many public claims about Mica's mental health, for a man that was apparently so aware of her struggles, you would think that he wouldn't torment her so much, because he would maybe be concerned for for the outcome that did indeed happen. I also think that the police officers deeply failed Mica. So according to their state law, for someone to be convicted of stalking a person must be able to show a pattern of 2 or more episodes of stalking within a 90-day period. Mica made 5 police reports in a 90-day period, and still no charges were made against JP. Make it make sense. Mica deserves justice. Mica's family deserves justice. And I certainly hope that it is served to them. And in my opinion, I hope that JP is put behind bars.
Stay encouraged, stay in your word, keep worshiping. Like, I can't wait to worship again with everybody. But for now, I'm just worshiping with me and Jesus to God. And I don't think God would be pleased with me if I just jumped right into missions and women's events and creative directing and worship leading and stuff. I think when your world is shook up, you need to take a pause. And I can only pray that more people will take a pause and I'm trying to get my priorities straight right now. And that's making sure that my heart doesn't have any unforgiveness, bitterness, resentment, just forgiveness and hope for the future and peace. Because you can't put a price on peace.